change. What change is strategically feasible at the time. And I would disagree with a lot of that. Like I said on the show before, I don't think he went hard enough on China. On day one, if I was the president of the United States, there would be a 50% tax on anybody who deals with China. Anybody who manufactures goods in China, 50% tax on day one. And it would go up 5% every 30 days until it reached 100%, and then 200% until every single corporation in this country either fled China back to America or they went to go to China for good. I mean, there's things you could do. The reason Donald Trump didn't do them is because he watched Kennedy get his head blown off. I mean, he didn't watch it, but he was alive. Everybody who lives under this boomer world order, they know the consequences. They know the ramifications if you poke too hard. And so he's tried to do as best he could to toe the line and still survive. And, now we're coming to a point where there's no room left to finesse. And I hope Vivek understands that, and anybody else who's running for president. There's no finesse left in it.
TJ, you first and then Royce. How do you think he handled the Hindu question, and how do you think him being Hindu will play with evangelicals? He certainly didn't dodge the question. He certainly answered it. I thought he answered it in a pretty compelling way, but I'm going to have to do some research on the Hindu religion. But he's someone that talks about faith and values and Judeo-Christian values, in a really strong way, more compelling way than Donald Trump. What do you think about that issue, his faith, and how will people get comfortable? Obama pretended to be a Christian to get elected.
Yeah, I just pulled up according to Pew Research Center, percentage of people that identify with each religion. Hindu is 0.7, so he's not going to lean into that. 0.7% of people are like, yeah, you go, man. It's not going to happen. 70% are Christian, and that's why virtually every president to this point, including Trump, including Obama, they all say they're Christians, whether they are or aren't or have any true faith. And so what he tried to do is marry the two and say, guys, my Hindu religion has the same value as yours. Please be comfortable with me. That's really all he said. And all he's really trying to get at is, I believe in God, and I try to uphold those values because I'm a God-fearing man. And so, yes, it's not...
Look at my life, he says.
Yes.
And how I've conducted my life.
Yes. And right, judge a person by their fruits. That's...
Yeah.
And so he's like, look at my fruit. I do fear God, different God than yours, but he can't lean into his Hindu faith because he knows most Americans are uncomfortable with it. And I'll just be told, this is fearless, I'm uncomfortable with it. I don't... If you're not beholden to the same God that I am, these are the Christian values that America was built on, I need to be able to hold you to that. Now, are we holding these presidents to anything? No, but just in my own comfort, when I'm casting a ballot, I want to know this person at least says that he's beholden to these things, and we can try to hold him to that. I don't know anything about Hindu, and most Americans don't.
Royce?
That doesn't bother me as much. And again, I'm a Catholic. I'm a Christian. Some people would say that I'm not a Christian because I'm a Catholic. Some people would say that I would be unelectable because I'm Catholic, and that's not Christian enough. Measuring a man by...
I think it's the cursing, Roy. I think it's the cursing, Royce. You're blaming Catholicism. I'm blaming the cursing. Go ahead.
Yeah, that makes it soft too. I want to see what their language is like when the CPS come to take their kid and give them dildo lunch boxes. Let's see how cordial and yeah. Well, hey, there's a dildo thrown waiting for everybody.
I done distracted you. I'm sorry. I done distracted you.
All right.
Go back to your point.
My point is this. The Hindu thing doesn't bother me as much because we have presidents who claim to be Christian, but they were really Luciferian. And I would take a Hindu man who is actually genuinely a Hindu man before I take a Luciferian. These are measurements we have to decide now as the American people. And if we look at a guy like Ron DeSantis, and I'm not saying he's a Luciferian, but I am saying that there is a prevailing crop of Luciferian, Bohemian Grove, United Nations, Lucis Trust type of characters that come out of these Ivy League schools. Skull and Bones, Yale is one of them, probably the sine qua non one of the biggest, the Bushes. I mean, these people are all but openly Luciferian. The Hindu thing doesn't bother me as much. I mean, for me personally, it doesn't bother me. And also, I want to say, I believe that in the end, overall, there are other religions other than Christianity that try and encapsulate much of what we would call good deeds or lifestyle choices, lifestyles of the physical world. They just don't answer the metaphysical well. And the Christ model is a model of self-sacrifice, and it's a model of mercy, and it has a bunch of other qualities to it. We're the only faith tradition of the major religions in the world where our Messiah sacrificed himself, threw himself on the sword for the betterment of humanity in the way that he did. That's unique to Christianity. Islam, Muhammad was a warlord, okay? And Hindu, they don't even have really a Messiah of the humankind. Buddhism, that's a totally different thing. That's resigning from the world, which is not the same as Christ, although the Judeo-Buddhists would like to make it seem like it is, right? The Buddha and Christ are one and the same. No, they're not. The Buddha resigned from the world, got enlightened, and moved to another dimension. Christ died in a painful, excruciating way for our sins. Big difference. But all in all, the Hindu thing doesn't bother me because I think Buddhists and Hindus and many other religions can come under the scope and influence of Christ. That's not beyond the Christ that I love and worship.
And there's room for people to curse too, Royce. So
Hopefully.
Welcome aboard. Hey, when we come back, Royce isn't going anywhere. We're going to stop down for a second, and we want to talk about Tucker Carlson. He reemerged, as I referenced with Vivek earlier. He reemerged on Twitter with Tucker on Twitter. We'll talk about that with Royce White. You can also get some Fearless Army swag at shopblazemedia.com/fearless. More with Royce next. All right, welcome back. Tucker Carlson reemerged on Twitter last night, and it was quite the reemergence. People went nuts, and I think it's got 50, 60 million views over Twitter, whatever that means. Let's play a couple of excerpts from Tucker last night on Twitter, and then myself, Royce, and TJ will react. Here's clip one.
It is vitally important for you to support Ukraine because it's necessary for Ukraine to be supported by you. Your support is mandatory until it's finished, whatever it is, and whatever that means. So shut up and support Ukraine or else you're in trouble. Back when they still taught logic, statements like this were known as tautologies. Something is true because it is. The more you repeat it, the truer it becomes. It's a self-reinforcing reality. There was a time when tautologies were considered illegitimate arguments, not to mention hilariously stupid. Only dumb people talk like that. Now everybody in power talks like that. Diversity is our strength. Trans women are women. Zelensky is Churchill. It's all self-evidently true. Doesn't need an explanation, and don't ask questions. Sound familiar? Of course it does. That's the pap they're serving us day after day in steaming, lumpy portions. By this point, it's possible that American citizens are the least informed people in the world. Your average yak herder in Tajikistan knows who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. It's obvious. Does he think some skinny dude in a dress is actually a girl? Come on. That idea would never occur to him. You've got to be lied to at full volume over a period of years in order to reach conclusions like that. And of course, we have been. The media lie. They do. But mostly they just ignore the stories that matter.
All right, listen, I want to stop there, and I want to make a point to Royce. Bring Royce up on camera. And this is before we give our full opinion on what Tucker did. But
Okay.
Royce, this is a teachable moment for you. See, because Tucker Carlson has figured out what you haven't figured out yet. He knows how to speak to dumb people. And he's got one of those $1 million vocabularies like you. And if you notice, Royce, he used the word tautology or whatever. And he paused for a second and says, oh, Whitlock may see this. And Whitlock graduated from Ball State with a 2.3 grade point average. Some girl named Susan Curtis is responsible for 1.3 of that 2.3. I better tell Whitlock what tautology means and then continue. That's what we need from Royce White. You gotta learn how to talk to dummies like me, like Tucker has. That's the beauty of Tucker Carlson.
Hey, you and Tucker got 20 years on me. You got more experience talking to jerk-offs. In my life, I never talked to them. Okay, I'm learning on the fly. I just dismiss them. I'm sorry. I'm learning, all right?
Well, teachable moment, Royce. Let's play clip number 2 here from Tucker Carlson.
What's happened to the hundreds of billions of US dollars we've sent to Ukraine? No clue. Who organized those BLM riots 3 years ago? No one's gotten to the bottom of that. What exactly happened on 9/11? Well, it's still classified. How did Jeffrey Epstein make all that money? How did he die? How about JFK? And so endlessly on. Not only are the media not interested in any of this, they are actively hostile to anybody who is. In journalism, curiosity is the gravest crime. Yesterday, for example, a former Air Force officer who worked for years in military intelligence came forward as a whistleblower to reveal that the U.S. government has physical evidence of crashed non-human-made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft. The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced weapon systems. Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth. In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. Now we know. In a normal country, this news would qualify as a bombshell, the story of the millennium. But in our country, it doesn't. The whistleblower's account ran on a technology website called The Debrief, which you've probably never heard of. The Washington Post had that story, but decided not to run it. The New York Times, meanwhile, just pretended it never happened.
I want to stop here and talk about that particular clip. Do we believe in UFOs? That was one area of Tucker's deal where I was like, ooh, boy, I'm going to have to pump the brakes on this one here. I don't know how I feel about UFOs and how I feel about alien life forces. Royce, what do you, should this have been front page news, this whistleblower? Or is the whistleblower perhaps a crackpot?
Well, look, this. I mean, you want to go here? I mean, wow, we're going way out there into the deep.
I'm going where Tucker took us.
Yeah. Well, God bless him. God bless him. The man's not afraid of anything. Numero uno on the domestic terrorist list now. If not before last night, then certainly now he is. This is going to be one of the look in the entire arc of this post-World War II democratic liberal order, scholastic meaning school, right? The educational narrative, okay?
Thank you, Roy.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the whole arc of this history, it is a bombshell to even consider or to have evidence that there's extraterrestrial life. Now, this is going to become one of those wedge issues that's super strange, and it's got so many different factions out there, because you'll have your flat earthers and your hardline Christians who say there is no extraterrestrial life from a biblical standpoint. The flat earthers are going to say there's a firmament. You can't leave Earth's orbit. And many of those people are anti-establishment. They reject the establishment. There's some of the people who watch Alex Jones. There's some of the people who will now come out to support Tucker Carlson, right? So there's that faction of people. Then there's the faction of people who fancy themselves a little bit more scientifically rational, who go, of course there's extraterrestrial life out there. And then on that side of things, more towards that end of things, you have the people that will go so far as to say, this is all a simulation. Of course there's aliens because we're living in one big computer program. I mean, the gamut is so